Chapter 1261. Then he met Gu Xingyin's somewhat unhappy gaze. Realizing that it was very impolite to look at a noble lady like this without any scruples, Long Shao lowered his eyes slightly. "Your Highness the eldest princess is so beautiful that I forgot myself for a moment. I hope that your Highness the eldest princess will forgive me." Any woman would be very happy to hear compliments about her appearance, especially when this praise came from an extraordinarily handsome man. Sure enough, Gu Xingyin's expression became slightly better after hearing this, but she still did not reveal a smile. She glanced at Long Shao and walked over to sit down on her own. "Did you hear what this consort said just now?" Long Shao blinked and said, "Your Highness the eldest princess has saved my life. I will remember this in my heart." Gu Xingyin chuckled after hearing this. That's it. Just a word of thanks? Did he really think that Gu Xingyin's favor was so cheap? Long Shao heard this mocking chuckle, but he was not ashamed at all. Instead, he looked at Gu Xingyin with a serious expression. "I can't repay you for saving my life, but I'm willing to repay you with my body." His words were sonorous and powerful, and he was incomparably sincere. Gu Xing, how could there be such a shameless person in this world? She saved his life, but she had to repay him with her body? Wishful thinking. She sneered and looked at Long Shao up and down a few times. "What's your name?" Long Shao replied, "This one is Xiao Xiao." Gu Xingyin frowned. What a mouthful. Long Shao was helpless. He just subconsciously gave himself the surname of his mother's family, but he did not expect it to be so strange when read together. However, Gu Xingyin did not dwell on this and said, "It's fine. Although your body doesn't seem to be worth much, I guess you can't give anything better in return." Before Long Shao could react, he heard Gu Xingyin say, "You can stay in my palace and be a servant who raises peach blossoms. It's quite pleasing to the eye." Long Shao was startled. He did not expect that the other party would interpret giving herself to him as such. He thought for a moment. Before his injuries were healed, staying in the palace was indeed the safest option. Gu Xingyin brought the person in front of the steward of the palace and pointed at Long Shao. "This person is Xiao Xiao, my new servant. In the future, I'll let him serve my babies." Treasures were naturally referring to peach blossoms. Long Shao thought to himself, it's true that eldest princess Yongla loves peach blossoms. The steward glanced at Long Shao. He did not understand why such an extraordinary person would become a manservant. However, he did not dare to disobey Her Highness the eldest princess's orders. He quickly accepted the order and brought Long Shao away. When the two figures were out of sight, Gu Xingyin took out a strangely shaped flute from her sleeve and blew it gently. There was no sound, but a black-clothed figure quickly appeared on the ground. "An greets mistress." Gu Xingyin's voice was cold. "During this period of time, watch this palace for me. If anyone suspicious approaches the palace, kill them without mercy." The secret guard leader's heart trembled. He did not know why the usually gentle eldest princess would suddenly give such an order. However, he could not ask about mistress's matters. He only needed to do what mistress ordered. Yes. His figure flashed, and the area lost track of him once again. Gu Xingyin thought for a moment and put the flute to her lips again. Chapter 1262. This time, the way she played was a little different from before. There was still no sound. This time, a gray figure appeared in front of her. Greets mistress." The hidden guards and shadow guards were the two teams in charge of eldest princess Yongla's safety. and were the captains of the two teams and were also the strongest of the two teams. The hidden guards were in charge of killing, while was in charge of gathering information and disguising. As a substitute, Chi was obviously a shadow guard. From now on, closely monitor Chi's whereabouts. If you find anything unusual, report it to me immediately. Also, don't let Chi protect me alone at any time. She directly said. Yi's body shook. Mistress's words clearly meant that she suspected Chi of having second thoughts. Yes. As shadow guards, they only needed to follow mistress's orders. As for thinking, that was something for the retainers to do. It had nothing to do with them. Gu Shengyin slowly walked through the peach forest. The thousands of peach trees here had been planted for her by her father when he was still alive. They had been here for many years. Every spring, the peach blossoms would bloom. The scenery was too beautiful to behold. When the spring wind blew, countless pink and white petals fell from the sky, landing on her hair, her clothes, and her long robe that hung on the ground. Long Xiao, who was learning how to catch insects and deal with spoiled peach blossoms under the guidance of another servant, was listening attentively to something that was very new to him. When he inadvertently raised his head, he saw such a beautiful scene that he couldn't bear to look away. Gu Shengyin, who was wandering in the sea of peach blossoms, was simply like a fairy among the flowers. Even Long Xiao couldn't help but think, with such beauty and love for peach blossoms, could it be that eldest Princess Yongle was really a peach blossom fairy in her previous life? What are you looking at? The servant pulled him hard. Long Xiao turned his head and saw the servant looking at him nervously. Seeing Long Xiao looking at him with some confusion, the servant anxiously said, "Do you want to die? Her Highness the eldest princess, is that something people like you and me can look straight at?" Fortunately, no one saw it this time. Otherwise, be careful of your eyes. Long Xiao rubbed his nose and thought to himself, not only did I stare at her seriously, I even hugged her and kissed her. His eyes darkened as he recalled the wonderful sensation on the tip of his tongue that night. Seeing him remain silent, the waiter became anxious. Let me tell you, the eldest princess is a celestial being. She is not someone people like us can covet. Don't have any thoughts that you shouldn't have. But my heart has already been moved by her for a long time. Long Xiao sighed inwardly. He also knew that this shop assistant was worried about him. He could not help but smile and say, "Don't worry, I know my limits." Seeing him like this, the shop assistant was relieved. What he didn't know was that his careless concern would earn him a bright future in the future. Ying Qi was currently in his room. Her room was decorated very luxuriously. From the outside, it looked exactly the same as Gu Shengyin's bedroom. Of course, it only looked the same. After all, there were many things in eldest Princess Yongle's palace that were unique in the entire Qin kingdom. Ying Qi knew that many of his colleagues were secretly envious of him. Chapter 1263. That's right. In their eyes, she didn't need to carry out dangerous missions like them. Every day, she would be like a real noble lady, learning etiquette, eating the best food, and using the most exquisite things. Even if her food and clothing couldn't compare to the real eldest Princess Yongle, it was still better than most noble ladies. After all, sometimes she had to replace eldest Princess Yongle to go out, so her vision couldn't be low. A person's horizons were cultivated through experience, knowledge, fine clothes, and good food. That was why her colleagues envied her. There were even many people who knew that being a substitute would affect their lifespan, but they were still willing to be this kind of person. To be honest, Ying Qi used to think that he was quite lucky. These shadow guards were all children of poor families who couldn't afford to raise them. They lived in broken temples, begged on the streets, and lived a life without dignity. The imperial family took them back. They received delicious food, learned powerful martial arts, and even learned various magical skills. The only price they paid was freedom. Freedom didn't belong to them anymore. Even their lives didn't belong to them. But what did that count for? People like them didn't know how long they could live. Ying Qi was better off than them. As a substitute, it wasn't uncommon for them to die in place of their master, but most of them died of old age. After all, the imperial family had so many people protecting them, so it was very difficult to assassinate them. Ying Qi didn't know when he started to be dissatisfied with the status quo. Perhaps it was when she was hiding in the dark and watching her master being surrounded by the crowd. Perhaps it was when he looked at himself in the mirror when there was no one around, looking at the peerless beauty in the mirror. Or perhaps it was when he saw his master throw away a piece of jewelry that he liked for a long time without any care. That's right, she was just a fake. So the best things, all the glory, all belonged to the real eldest Princess Yongle. She could only hide in a dark corner, holding on to things that she didn't want, and would never be able to walk in front of others. A beautiful cage. This was the best interpretation of her situation. When her master asked if she was willing to leave, she thought about it and refused. She couldn't bear to. She had been pampered and couldn't bear the hardships of an ordinary life. Ying-chi couldn't imagine a life without beautiful jewelry and maids to serve her. But she couldn't accept it. She could have led a better life. The fake did not have a good life because the real owner was there. The more glorious eldest princess Yongle was, the more unwilling she was. What if the genuine product was no longer around? She was eldest princess Yongle's only substitute and the person who understood her the most in this world. She could perfectly imitate her movements, her bearing, and even her voice. She was confident that as long as she was careful, she could perfectly replace the real eldest princess Yongle. As long as she was given a chance. Thinking of the future, Ying-chi's whole body trembled with excitement. She wanted to become the true eldest princess Yongle, the most respected woman in the entire Qin kingdom. Ying-chi showed a perfect smile to the mirror and then beckoned the maidservant to come in and remove her hairpin. She didn't know that in the dark, there were two pairs of eyes silently watching her. Chapter 1264. Ying-chi thought she had concealed it well. If no one suspected her, perhaps she really could have deceived everyone. But once a person had ambitions, no matter how well they concealed it, under the scrutiny of others, there would always be a trace of it left behind. A shadow guard and a shadow guard who were ordered to monitor Ying-chi, after a few days of observation, finally came to a conclusion that made them break out in cold sweat. Ying-chi was actually delusional, they didn't even dare think about it. What was Ying-chi still not satisfied with that she would have such rebellious thoughts? The two didn't dare conceal anything and reported their observations to Gu Shengyin when they met with Gu Shengyin. The shadow guards and shadow guards had never interacted with each other. Both sides knew of the existence of such a team, but they had never communicated with each other. Both of their reports were the same. Gu Shengyin's lips curled into a smile and ordered them to continue monitoring Ying-chi. "Master, I don't understand." In the empty room, a puzzled voice suddenly sounded. It was an E. An E was responsible for protecting eldest princess Yongle. Unless Gu Shengyin gave the order that he was not needed, he would always secretly guard by her side. When the two men came to report, Gu Shengyin didn't let him leave, which meant he knew about this matter. "What don't you understand?" Gu Shengyin asked. And he didn't show himself. If someone who didn't know saw this, they would think she was talking to herself. And Yi's calm voice sounded in the darkness. "Ying-chi is disloyal and even has thoughts of rebellion. Why didn't Master kill her?" This was something an Yi couldn't understand. In the knowledge of the shadow guards, when they found a suspicious and dangerous person, the fastest and most effective way to deal with them was to kill them. No matter what the other party was, a dead person could never threaten Master. What's more, Ying-chi was Master's shadow guard. If Master wanted her life, there was no need to find a reason. The life of a shadow guard belonged to Master. Moreover, according to Ying-chi's understanding of his mistress, eldest princess Yongle Su Baochan was not someone who would indulge her enemies. Gu Shengyin raised his hand to cover his mouth and yawned. He lazily said, "An E. For many people in this world, there are far more terrifying things than death." And Yi's mind trembled. His eagle-like eyes fell on the beautiful woman in the room, and a chill emerged from the bottom of his heart. This chill wasn't for himself, but for Ying-chi, who still didn't know his fate. Although his master was usually arrogant and willful, compared to the other tyrannical and bloodthirsty members of the royal family, he was already extremely benevolent. It seemed that this time, Ying-chi had really annoyed Master. "I'm going to rest," Gu Shengyin said faintly. The room quieted down. Long Shao had already stayed in this palace for 5 days. The wounds on his body had already begun to heal. He didn't know what medicine Gu Shengyin gave him, but the effect was even better than the healing medicine he carried with him. He stood under the peach blossom tree and looked in the distance. As if peeking through the obstacles of layers of pavilions, he accurately saw the woman in the most exquisite palace. It was time for him to go. Although he was very reluctant, he had to leave. Time waits for no one on Sky Dragon's side. He had to hurry back before those people announced the death of the new emperor. Chapter 1265. Long Shao lowered his eyes and stood under the peach blossom tree. 5 days was enough for him to learn a lot of things about eldest Princess Yongle. For example, she loved peach blossoms and even hired a famous craftsman to think of ways to make her palace have peach blossoms blooming all year round. For example, she never got tired of eating and didn't get tired of eating. Her clothing, food, shelter, and transportation were all top-notch. She couldn't bear the slightest bit of neglect. For example, eldest Princess Yongle loved to be beautiful. Her jewelry and clothes, unless it was her favorite, she never wore the same thing. Long Xiao frowned and thought for a moment. The climate in Tianlong was much drier than Daqing. It wasn't suitable for such delicate peach blossoms to grow. It seemed that after he went back this time, he had to send people to study how to plant peach blossoms. As for other aspects, he could naturally let her enjoy the best. Collecting his chaotic thoughts, Long Xiao had already made a decision. It was night. A slight sound suddenly came from Gu Xingyin's bedroom. In the next moment, the sound of two people fighting could be heard. "Stop!" Gu Xingyin's cold voice came from the curtain. She was still asleep when she was woken up by the system, saying that Long Xiao had come. And he had always been in charge of her safety in the dark. As a result, the two of them naturally fought at the first moment. However, when her voice came out, the two of them obediently stopped. "Annie, you go out," Gu Xingyin directly ordered. Annie was a bit anxious. "Master, this person was very strong. In the short fight just now, even he didn't have the slightest confidence in keeping the other party. How could he be at ease leaving his master alone with this mysterious person in this hall?" "Go out." Gu Xingyin's voice turned cold. For a shadow guard, the master's order was above everything. Annie sighed and retreated. Gu Xingyin opened the curtain in her undergarment. "What are you doing here?" She looked at Long Xiao without any surprise in her eyes. This made Long Xiao surprised. "You knew I would come?" Gu Xingyin shook her head. Long Xiao asked, "Then why are you so calm, as if you knew I would come?" Gu Xingyin glanced at him. "Either answer my question, or I'll get someone to escort you out." Long Xiao smiled bitterly. "I'll tell you." His expression became serious, and he said to Gu Xingyin very seriously, "I'm here to say goodbye to you." Gu Xingyin responded faintly, as if she did not care about this matter. Long Xiao suddenly felt suffocated. This woman, no matter if it was the first time they met or until now, she was always high and mighty and didn't care about him at all. Yes, she didn't care about him. Therefore, she didn't care about his identity at all. She didn't care whether he would stay or leave. She didn't even care if they would have the chance to meet again. Gu Xingyin felt her body being tightly pressed against by a fiery body. In the next moment, a voice that sounded like it was gnashing teeth sounded in her ears. "Your Highness, in your eyes, what am I?" Long Xiao was truly depressed. Since he was born, he had always been high and mighty, making people look up to him. There had never been a woman that could completely ignore him like this. Gu Xingyin impatiently struggled, but she found that she couldn't break free. She could only say, "Let go first." Long Xiao pretended not to hear anything. Gu Xingyin gave a cold smile. "Either scram from behind me, or I'll have you thrown out." Chapter 1266. Long Xiao suddenly let out a low laugh. "Your Highness, you only know how to threaten me with this move." Long Xiao turned his head and faced Gu Xingyin's flawless face. "Even if your Highness doesn't mind, I'm not willing to let anyone see your Highness in your undergarments." Then Gu Xingyin found that she couldn't speak. This person had actually hit her mute acupuncture point. "Forget it, I don't need your Highness to reply." Long Xiao gave a self-deprecating laugh. "Whatever comes from your Highness' beautiful little mouth, it won't be anything good." He tightly hugged the woman in front of him, and his eyes revealed a rare gentleness. It was a pity that Gu Xingyin couldn't see it. "Then your Highness can slowly listen to me. My heart is in love with your Highness." Long Xiao didn't seem to think that his words were earth-shattering at all. He also saw that Gu Xingyin's ears had turned red from her emotions. "Truly beautiful," he thought. "I'm actually not called Xiao Xiao, but I can't tell your Highness my real name right now. I swear that there will be a day when I will personally stand in front of you and tell you my name. Baochun. I've wanted to call you that for a long time." Gu Xingyin felt something cold being placed on her chest. This is a gift my father gave me when I was born. Please take good care of it. Long Xiao looked at the silent girl in front of him and secretly let out a sigh. He lowered his head and kissed her earlobe. I'm leaving. Gu Xingyin felt the embrace loosen and then the room became silent. Gu Xingyin, she turned around and found that there was no one behind her. Bastard, can't you release my mute acupuncture point before you leave? Gu Xingyin lowered her head and took the jade pendant hanging on her chest. The jade pendant was warm to the touch, and there wasn't a single flaw on the white jade. It was obviously an extremely rare treasure. The front of the jade pendant was engraved with an ancient character, Xiao. The person who carved it was obviously a master as well. His handwriting was neat and contained a murderous aura. Gu Xingyin gently rubbed her finger on the jade pendant. She opened her mouth and found that she could speak. Idiot. Her low voice echoed in the darkness. The next day, a steward came to report that the manservant in charge of serving the peach blossoms had disappeared. If it was just an ordinary servant, the steward naturally wouldn't bother Gu Xingyin. The key point was that this manservant was personally brought here by the eldest princess, and no matter how one looked at him, he didn't look like an ordinary person. That was why the steward came to report. It's fine. I told him to leave, Gu Xingyin said. Only then did the steward relax. Since that was the case, it had nothing to do with him. After staying in the palace for a long time, the Empress Dowager in the palace missed her daughter and had sent people to urge her to return twice. We'll set out for the palace tomorrow, Gu Xingyin said to the maidservant beside her. Thinking about it, she summoned Ying Yi, telling Qi to stay in the palace. There's no need for her to come back with me. Ying Qi heard this order and was stunned for a moment before quickly saying, a stand-in's task is to follow master. How can I be too far away from master? Ying Yi's cold voice pulled Ying Qi back to her senses. Do you not listen to master's words? Chapter 1267. Ying Qi bowed her head in horror. Subordinate doesn't dare. Yes, she had been a little carried away these past few days. How could she forget? No matter how much she looked like her master, she was just a substitute. Her master didn't need her to follow, so she could only stay here obediently. Ying Qi bit her lip and lowered her head deeply, concealing the unwillingness in her eyes. She once again strongly realized that no matter how glorious her appearance was, in the eyes of all those who knew, she was still just a pitiful substitute. The restless thoughts in his heart swelled even more. Ying saw her like this and frowned slightly. He calmly took out a small porcelain bottle and handed it to her. This is your medicine for this month. Ying Qi's eyes lit up when she saw this and she accepted it with thanks. After Ying left, Ying Qi quickly walked over to the mirror, somewhat impatiently opened the cork, and swallowed the white jade pill inside. Then, she quietly sat in front of the mirror and began to admire her unparalleled beauty. The person in the mirror had a flawless face, a bit more and a bit less. Ying Qi couldn't help raising her hand and gently stroking it. This was her face. After being eldest Princess Yongla's shadow for 7 years, she had long forgotten what she looked like. Her impression of herself was just like this. Ying Qi's eyes gradually became infatuated. Which woman didn't love beauty? What's more, she was such a beautiful woman. Her eyes moved down and saw the bottle in her hand. The white medicine inside was an important reason why she had been able to maintain the same appearance as eldest Princess Yongla for so many years. She had secretly found someone to analyze the ingredients in this pill, wanting to make it herself. Unfortunately, no matter how powerful or famous the doctor she found was, they couldn't completely distinguish how many herbs were contained in this small white jade pill. It seemed that she could only find an opportunity to start with her master. As long as she knew where the antidote to control the shadow guards and shadow guards was and where the pill she had taken was, her master was of no use. She, Ying Qi, would definitely play this role for the rest of her life. In Gu Xingyin's bedroom, she was lazily sitting in front of the dressing table, letting her trusted maid comb her hair. Her fingertips were holding a small and delicate white jade bottle, gently spinning it. If Ying Qi was here, she would find that in the small bottle in Gu Xingyin's hand was the white jade pill she had to take every month. Gu Shengyin gently removed the cork and poured out a jade bead-like pill. Qinghua, what do you think will happen if this pill is taken for a few years and suddenly? Qinghua's expression did not change. She deftly tied Gu Shengyin's hair into an exquisite bun before replying, I know. If you stop taking it and at the same time don't use another pill, your face will be ruined. No one would know that the ordinary maid who always followed eldest Princess Yongla was the last disciple of the famous ghost doctor in Qin Kingdom. Gu Shengyin gently threw the pill in her hand into the tea in front of her. The pill melted in the tea and no trace could be seen. Poured out. Chapter 1268. Princess Royal Yongla returned to the palace with her entourage. There would never be a lack of banquets in the bustling capital. Any family with a bit of status would not forget to invite this honorable eldest princess. It was her freedom to decide whether she wanted to come or not. But if she didn't send the invitation, she wouldn't be giving face to Princess Royal. If she didn't give face to Princess Royal, the Emperor and Empress Dowager wouldn't give face to her either. Your Highness. Qinghua came in with a few exquisite invitations in her hands. Gu Shengyin knew that Qinghua was very considerate. These invitations must have been selected by her and she couldn't make the decision. She reached out and took them. Prince Yu was marrying his second wife, Duke Wei was celebrating his 60th birthday, and Princess Duanyun was getting married. Prince Yu was her half-brother. Princess Duanyun passed away 2 years ago. Now that he was remarrying as his younger sister, she should go and take a look. Duke Wei was from the Empress Dowager's maternal family. Duke Wei was the Empress Dowager's biological brother and Su Baochan's biological uncle. Su Baochan had always been close to her maternal family, so she definitely had to go. As for Princess Duanyun, she was the Empress's daughter and she was going to marry the left Prime Minister's eldest son. She was going to get married next month, so she had to give face to the Empress. Fortunately, these 3 families were all on different dates, so it wouldn't be difficult. Qinghua, go and prepare 3 generous gifts. I remember that there is a pair of white jade vases made of exquisite deep-sea jade in the storeroom. Put them together with the gifts from Duke Wei's mansion. This sentence was enough to show which was more important in Princess Royal Yongla's eyes. Qinghua left without any change in her expression. This was what Gu Shengyin liked the most about Qinghua. She was able to complete any task he gave her perfectly and knew her identity. She would never ask about things that she shouldn't ask about or things that didn't belong to her. The birthday banquet of Duke Wei's mansion was approaching. Gu Shengyin woke up early and left the palace after greeting the Empress Dowager. Gu Shengyin sat in the carriage. In her mind, she still remembered how the Empress Dowager had taken her hand and asked her to greet her uncle properly. Everyone knew that the nobles of the Dao Palace enjoyed limitless glory, but how could they know that she couldn't even take a look at her own brother's birthday? The luxurious 8 treasures jade carton stopped in front of the gate of Duke Wei Mansion. Right now was the time when Duke Wei's mansion was at its most lively. Guests were walking in and out of the place, and the place that was supposed to be bustling with noise and excitement had quieted down because of the arrival of this carriage. Everyone in the capital knew that there was only one person who dared to be so flamboyant in the capital. The eldest princess of Yongla, Su Baochan, had been spoiled by the 2 most powerful people in the Qin kingdom. The wife of the heir of Duke Wei's mansion personally led a group of sisters-in-law to welcome them. Gu Shengyin stepped down from the carriage and was very satisfied to receive the astonished gazes of the crowd. Greetings to your highness the eldest princess. The woman who was nearing 40 years old was obviously very happy to see Gu Shengyin, but she still bowed to her. Gu Shengyin quickly stepped forward and supported her kneeling body. There is no need for the wife of the heir to be so courteous. She personally held the wife of the heir of Duke Wei's hand and walked inside. When the 2 entered the door hand in hand, Gu Shengyin blinked her eyes and softly called her cousin-in-law. The wife of the heir of Duke Wei also smiled. Father and mother both said that you would definitely come. They had been waiting for you for a long time. The people around them couldn't hear what the 2 were talking about. They could only watch as Gu Shengyin and the wife of the heir of Duke Wei chatted intimately as if there was no one around. Everyone was envious of Duke Wei's mansion's good fortune. Chapter 1269. Wasn't this good fortune? The Empress Dowager's maiden family and the Emperor's maternal family. As long as Duke Wei family didn't seek death, no one could take away their honor and favor. When Gu Shengyin arrived at the main hall, she immediately saw the old man sitting on the main seat, wearing a festive red pomegranate robe. Duke Wei happened to be celebrating his 60th birthday today. His complexion looked very good and his spirit was hale and hearty. His face glowed as the guests congratulated him. Gu Shengyin gave Duke Wei a junior's greeting and said, "Niece Yongle wishes uncle good fortune as long as the East Sea and longevity as long as the South Mountain." Duke Wei looked at his niece and his expression became even more joyful. Yongle gave him a junior's greeting and called herself his niece. This was clearly telling others that she had a close relationship with Duke Wei family. Most of the time, the eldest princess's intentions represented the emperor's intentions. If the emperor didn't like his maternal family, would the eldest princess say such words so openly? She was a female after all. After Gu Shengyin gave her birthday gift, she went to the rear courtyard. Naturally, there was another round of greetings in the rear courtyard. Fortunately, Gu Shengyin had a noble status. It was others who tried to curry favor with her. She didn't need to do anything herself. After sitting for a while, Gu Shengyin felt that it was meaningless and found an excuse to leave. She couldn't go back. If she left now, she didn't know what rumors would spread outside. Perhaps Duke Wei family would lose the emperor's favor in the future. After thinking for a while, Gu Shengyin led the servant girls behind her to the rear garden. Duke Wei family's Zhou family was a large family with hundreds of years of history. Although the rear garden wasn't as grand as the imperial garden, it was still a unique scenery. As he watched, Gu Shengyin's interest was piqued. "Qinghua, go get me a jug of fruit wine." Fruit wine wasn't intoxicating, so she didn't need to worry about losing her composure after drinking. Qinghua nodded. Seeing that Gu Shengyin was accompanied by a few palace maids, she left at ease. However, before Gu Shengyin could wait for Qinghua to return, she heard a pleasantly surprised voice. "Your Highness the eldest princess." Gu Shengyin frowned. Who was making a fuss? She turned around and saw a young master wearing a blue robe looking at her with a pleasantly surprised expression. Gu Shengyin glanced at him indifferently. A palace maid behind her stepped forward and reprimanded, "How dare you?" Shouting in front of the eldest princess, "How could he be so rude? Why aren't you greeting the Princess Royal? Which family's young master are you?" Hearing this, the blue-robed young master's face. He obediently knelt down to greet her, but his heart was filled with doubt. Why was the eldest princess so different from last time? Last time, Princess had. He felt he was very unreconciled his heart. Kamzazes, does the eldest princess's eldest princesses? Yours still remember this remember this is? How could Gu Shengyin recognize him? She had looked through Su Baochan's memories, but she didn't have any impression of this person. But looking at Zhang Shu's appearance, he clearly knew eldest Princess Yongle. Gu Shengyin carefully thought about it and had an answer in her heart. He must have seen that eldest Princess Yongle before, right? So it's the Zhang family's young master. "You can rise," she calmly said. Zhang Shu saw that she seemed to remember his appearance and his heart filled with joy. He quickly stood up. He saw Gu Shengyin sitting alone in the pavilion and wanted to walk over. Chapter 1270. Impudent. This time, without Gu Shengyin's hint, the palace maid beside her stood up and reprimanded him angrily. What was the matter with the son of the Supreme Court official? Did he not know the rules? Did he not see the eldest princess admiring the flowers? Zhang Shu's expression was a bit awkward. He did not expect the palace maid to treat him like this. He subconsciously looked at Gu Shengyin. She was still looking at her hands indifferently and did not look at him. Although the Supreme Court official was not a high position, Uncle Zhang was still doted on by his parents. When had he ever been reprimanded so rudely? Moreover, the person who reprimanded him was just a small palace maid. Zhang Shu had never been treated like this. He wanted to just walk away. However, he remembered a few days ago when he went to Marquis Chengda's manor with a group of young masters. Marquis Qingde treated them differently. Prince Yu's son was the noblest everywhere. As the son of the Supreme Court official, he did not even think highly of a servant. This was the disparity brought about by status. Zhang Shu knew that he did not have much ability. If he relied on himself, he might not even be able to reach his father's rank. Then, if he wanted to be above others, he could only rely on shortcuts. Marriage was the fastest and most effective way. In the entire Deqing dynasty, the noblest unmarried woman was eldest Princess Yongle. If he could gain the favor of eldest Princess Yongle, what Marquis Qingde? He would probably suck up to her. Originally, Zhang Shu did not dare to have any thoughts about eldest Princess Yongle. Who was eldest Princess Yongle? She was the daughter of the Empress Dowager and the only sister of the current emperor. She was born with a golden branch and jade leaves. Although Zhang Shu thought highly of himself, he knew that he and eldest Princess Yongle were people from two different worlds. However, the last time he met her, he saw hope. Last time, at Marquis Xiangyin's birthday banquet, he saw the legendary eldest Princess Yongle for the first time. Out of politeness, he went forward to greet her. At that time, because he was nervous, he wrote a poem to praise the eldest princess's beauty. As soon as the poem left his mouth, he regretted it. Because this kind of behavior was too rash, even a noble lady with a slight temper would be angry, let alone the eldest princess. The expression of the palace made beside Princess Royal changed. When she was about to scold Princess Royal, she heard Princess Royal's laughter. She actually thought that his poem was very good. He even gave him a glass of wine. At that time, he felt it was a bit strange, but when he saw the eldest princess smile like a flower while being praised by a group of young masters, he felt like he understood something. The eldest princess liked others praising her. He felt that he had grasped the trick to pleasing the eldest princess, so he took the opportunity to approach the eldest princess. He wanted to praise her unparalleled beauty, but he quickly made her giggle. At that time, Zhang Shu still felt that the noble eldest princess was just a vulgar woman. But after that, he never had the chance to see eldest Princess Yongle again. It was only today that they met again in the garden of Duke Wei's mansion. Gu Shengyin also asked the system to check what had happened in his mind. Her expression became extremely unsightly. This Ying Qi was really good. He would deal with her sooner or later. But right now, she had to solve the problem in front of her first. Zhang Shu ignored the palace maid's angry glare and took a step forward. He looked at Gu Shengyin affectionately. "Your Highness the eldest princess is peerless and this servant has admired you for a long time. I wonder if I would be lucky enough to get drunk with your Highness the eldest princess?" Yin expressed, "I won't take the blame for Ying Qi. This is 7, there will be more updates before 12. I'll try my best to write 3 more updates. Mwah. Chapter 1271. Impudent. As soon as he said this, it wasn't just the maid who had reprimanded him. The 6 maids guarding Gu Shengyin all took a step forward and angrily reprimanded him. They were truly angry. They had never seen someone who dared to be so impudent in front of the eldest princess. The 6 maids, even if their voices were clear, their aura was still very oppressive when they reprimanded him in unison. At least for a pampered young master like Zhang Shu, he was so scared that he took a step back. These maids looked at him with even more disdain. He could be scared to this extent by a few maids and he dared to covet their eldest princess? When Zhang Shu retreated like this, he also felt a bit ashamed. His face was a bit red as he looked at Gu Shengyin's face. "Your Highness, Princess Royal, is your servant always this rude?" Gu Shengyin finally spoke. Finally, her eyes fell on Zhang Shu for the first time in a long time. Zhang Shu couldn't help sticking out his chest. However, Gu Shengyin's next words made him feel like he had fallen into an ice cave. "Where did everyone go? Are you going to let this thing spoil my mood?" "Your Highness, eldest princess." Zhang Shu looked at Gu Shengyin's cold expression in disbelief. He could clearly see that the other side was looking at him like she was looking at a disgusting ant. He no longer had a chance to say the rest of his words. Because some guards had appeared out of nowhere and blocked his mouth, nose, lips, and tongue. They completely ignored his struggles and dragged him away. Gu Shengyin didn't know how they would deal with Zhang Shu, but his end wouldn't be good. Although he dared to be so bold, it was also because of Ying Qi's indulgence. But the most important thing was that this man thought too highly of himself. He didn't put the dignity of the eldest princess in his heart. Serves him right. As for Ying Qi, Gu Shengyin's lips curled into a cold smile. Initially, Gu Shengyin wanted to take it slow and let her feel the feeling of losing everything bit by bit. But now, Gu Shengyin's heart was burning with anger. Her previous method might have been too gentle for this woman. When Qinghua came up with a cup of warm fruit wine, she noticed that the atmosphere in the pavilion was somewhat gloomy. She looked straight ahead and walked to Gu Shengyin's side. "Your Highness Princess Royal, this is the treasure that Madame Duke Wei specially brought out when she heard that you were going to drink." At this time, how could Gu Shengyin have the mood to drink? She tasted at least a little and put it down. The wine was good wine. However, for a person like her, she had seen many of the best wines in the world. What elder Princess Yongle was drinking was her mood. By the time Gu Shengyin's carriage returned to the palace, Duke Wei had also learned about what happened in the back garden from his subordinates. His expression was cold as he ordered his men to leave. The people of the Zhang family didn't know what was good for them. A few days later, Duke Wei impeached Lord Zhang of the Supreme Court for not strictly investigating the case, forcing a good woman to die, accepting bribes, and 6 other crimes. The court was in an uproar. However, the emperor didn't order a strict investigation and ordered the Supreme Court to throw away his official post. Those who were quick-witted knew that the emperor was dissatisfied with Lord Zhang. Those who were more informed knew that on the day of Duke Wei's birthday, the second young master of the Zhang family was carried out. It was said that he had offended Princess Royal Yongle. Chapter 1272. Those who knew what was going on shook their heads. This Zhang family's second young master, of all people he could provoke, why did he have to provoke eldest Princess Yongle? What kind of person was the eldest princess? Was she someone he, the young master of the Supreme Court, could afford to provoke? What the people outside thought, Gu Shengyin didn't care. No matter how complicated these people's hearts were, they still had to bow to him with a respectful smile on their faces. Gu Shengyin returned to her palace. That night, someone brought Ying Qi, who was still in her palace, over. Ying Qi greets master. Ying Qi felt a little nervous. She didn't know why her master had called her over in the middle of the night. She had previously tried to ask the shadow guard who brought her over, but had failed. The first rule of the shadow guards was to keep their mouths shut. Gu Shengyin looked at the person on the ground faintly. Her palace was inlaid with night pearls, so if she didn't use a special gauze cover, the night would still be as bright as day. Therefore, she was able to clearly see Ying Qi's appearance. Indeed, they were no different from each other. It was just that seeing the expression of panic on the face that was exactly the same as her own was really a bit uncomfortable. "Kneel." Ying Qi didn't say anything and knelt down towards Gu Shengyin. A jade-white hand lifted her chin, forcing her to raise her head and look at the person above her. Facing the face she had seen countless times, Ying Qi's eyes became a little flustered. She didn't know why her master would suddenly treat her like this. Moreover, in her eyes, there was a trace of jealousy that she didn't even notice. Gu Shengyin also didn't notice it, but this didn't prevent her from guessing Ying Qi's thoughts. A person's desires were nothing more than that. Gu Shengyin took a closer look and released her hand. Then a maidservant beside her handed her a white brocade handkerchief. Ying Qi watched helplessly as Gu Shengyin carefully wiped the hand that had just touched her, as if she had just touched something dirty. Ying Qi's heart filled with infinite resentment. "Aren't you the ones who wanted me to become like you? Now, what right did he have to show such a disdainful attitude?" Ying Qi retracted his thoughts. Although her master was not very close to her, she had never used such a humiliating attitude. What exactly happened? Gu Shengyin didn't bother to observe the changes in her expression. There was no need for her to guess the thoughts of a shadow guard. For example, if a person was bitten by a dog, they wouldn't run to the dog and ask if it didn't like them. Young Master Zhang of the Supreme Court's mansion, young Master Lin of Minister Lin's mansion, and the young master of Jinglin County Magistrate's mansion. Gu Shengyin said these names one by one, admiring Ying-Chi's increasingly pale face. Relying on my identity, I've gotten quite a few female confidants, His last words were extremely cold, causing Ying-Chi to shiver involuntarily. Forcing herself to calm down, Ying-Chi knelt on the ground and begged for forgiveness. "Master, please forgive me." It was Ying-Chi who couldn't control herself and was willing to confess, asking for Master's punishment. She knew her master's temper. Since he was willing to admit it, he must have known all the things she had done. Admitting her mistakes with a sincere attitude was far better than gritting her teeth and refusing to admit it. But she had guessed wrong. There were more important things waiting for her. Chapter 1273. Punishment. Gu Shengyin softly muttered these two words. That clear and cold voice was like a small hook, hooking Ying-Chi's heart, making it impossible for her to let go. She knelt on the cold white jade floor. The night of early spring still had the lingering chill of winter, and it seeped from her knees to her entire body. She didn't know what kind of situation she would encounter. "Rest assured, there will be no shortage of punishment for you." This one sentence completely crushed the last trace of hope in her heart. Ying-Chi obediently lay on the floor, waiting for her master to continue with the words she hadn't said before. "What I just said is just a small matter. Ying-Chi, have I ever treated you well?" Gu Shengyin suddenly asked. She seemed to have only thought of this sentence on the spur of the moment, but it made Ying-Chi's heart skip a beat. Ying-Chi pressed her head against the cold floor and heard her own calm voice. "Master's kindness to Ying-Chi is as heavy as a mountain." What a good kindness. Gu Shengyin sneered. "Because my kindness to you is as heavy as a mountain, you want to replace me?" It was like a bolt from the blue. Ying-Chi's whole body shook because of this sentence. She raised her head and stared at Gu Shengyin with her beautiful eyes. She could not hide the panic in her voice as she said, "Master, please understand. I would never dare to have such delusions." What glory and wealth, what honor and glory, she couldn't remember anything at this time. The only thing Ying-Chi wanted to do at this moment was to eliminate her master's suspicions. If not, she would die. Gu Shengyin closed his eyes. "You and I both know very well what thoughts we've had that we shouldn't. Ying-Chi, I, Yonglu, have always treated you well, but I never thought I would raise such a cruel and unscrupulous thing like you." Ying-Chi still refused to give up. Did Master hear some gossip from someone's mouth? Ying-Chi's sincerity to Master can be witnessed by the heavens and earth. She looked up at Gu Shengyin. When she saw that Gu Shengyin's eyes were still closed and not looking at her, she made up her mind. "Master, Ying-Chi can swear to heaven." "Oh!" Gu Shengyin opened her eyes. She was finally moved. Ying-Chi grit his teeth and raised 3 fingers on his right hand as he swore, "Heavens above, Ying-Chi is loyal to my master, eldest Princess Yongla, never disloyal, the heavens and earth can bear witness. If I violate this oath, then call me." She didn't know why, but when she said this, she suddenly had a bad premonition. But Gu Shengyin just looked at her. "So what?" Ying-Chi closed his eyes. "If I ever violate this oath, may I, Ying-Chi, die a miserable death. I can neither live nor die." This was already an extremely heavy oath. "Very good." Gu Shengyin suddenly smiled. She said, "Did you all hear that?" What she just said. In the empty hall, several gray-robed figures suddenly appeared. Gu Shengyin said to the gray-robed figure leading them, "Ying-Yi, she is your subordinate. How to deal with her will be up to you." The gray-robed figures silently bowed and 2 of them sealed Ying-Chi's acupoints before she could react. The gray-robed figure was about to leave when Gu Shengyin's cold voice sounded behind him. "Remember, you must act according to what she said herself. The rest of your life will be spent wandering in the wind and rain, and will not end well. I can neither live nor die." Chapter 1274. Ying-Chi's struggling movements froze when she heard Gu Shengyin's words. She suddenly raised her head and stared at Gu Shengyin's face. "Her Royal Highness Princess Royal has no intention of letting Ying-Chi go?" Gu Shengyin gently stroked the white jade cup in her hand and didn't speak. Ying-Chi smiled bitterly. "Su Baotan, you're so ruthless." Before she could finish her words, a shadow guard who had turned pale with fright sealed her mute acupoint. Then, everyone in the hall knelt down in unison, waiting for their master to speak. These shadow guards hated Ing Chi in their hearts. Ing Chi was a person who deserved to die, yet she had implicated them. What if their master was in a bad mood and decided to vent her anger on them? Gu Shengyin looked at the hall full of people kneeling down and was stunned for a moment, but then thinking of her current identity and the world she lived in, she suddenly understood the thoughts of these shadow guards. In a society where imperial power was supreme, existences like shadow guards had no dignity at all. Their life and death were all controlled by their master. "Get up and take her away," Gu Shengyin said lightly. The shadow guards felt as if they had been granted amnesty. Since master said so, it meant she wouldn't pursue this matter. They quickly took Ing Chi away and disappeared in front of Gu Shengyin. Towards Gu Shengyin, they were grateful, but towards Ing Chi, these shadow guards only felt disgust. It was this woman who had almost caused them to be punished. Thinking so, these shadow guards stared at Ing Chi without any trace of warmth. Didn't their master say they were to properly entertain her according to her oath? It just so happened that these shadow guards were proficient in many ways, but this was a life worse than death. Silence was restored in the hall. Gu Shengyin suddenly felt bored. "System, how is he?" Gu Shengyin suddenly asked. The system flashed a white light and sent a message to Gu Shengyin's mind. Sky Dragon had not been peaceful recently. The late emperor had passed away, and the first prince, who should have rushed back to inherit the throne, met with an accident on his way back. There was no news of him. The other princes in the court, who had been dormant for a long time, seized this opportunity to spread the news that the first prince had died. A group of officials, led by the prime minister, advocated for a new emperor to be chosen from the remaining princes. Fortunately, there was another group of staunch royal officials who insisted on finding the first prince. Both sides refused to budge, and this bought some time for Long Shao. Then, the first prince returned to the capital in a high-profile manner and used thunderous methods to control the chaotic situation in the court, ascending to the throne. Compared to the benevolence and righteousness of the previous emperor, the methods of this new emperor were clearly much more forceful. Not long after he ascended the throne, he took out a handbook in front of the court. On it was a list of the masterminds behind the ambush he encountered on the day he returned to the capital. The second prince, the fourth prince, and the ninth prince were all involved. Long Shao mercilessly stripped the three of their titles and imprisoned them in the imperial mausoleum, never to enter the capital for the rest of their lives. The imperial court had also purged most of the old officials and put the younger officials in important positions. In less than half a year, the entire Sky Dragon court was solemn and the new emperor had complete control of the situation. Some of the old officials who originally had some objections to the new emperor's thunderous methods could not help but sigh at the current situation. They also had to admit that His Majesty was indeed a natural politician. The Sky Dragon court officials and the people were very satisfied with the new emperor. The only thing they had some complaints about was that the new emperor's style seemed to be a bit extravagant. Chapter 1275. How did this saying come about? It turned out that after the court was stabilized and everything was under his control, the new emperor began to recruit skilled craftsmen in the entire Tianlong dynasty to build a beautiful palace in the harem. As soon as he ascended the throne, he started to build a magnificent palace, which worried many of the ministers. This was not a good sign. How many emperors who had perished were extravagant and ruined the country? Of course, these officials did not dare to say this out loud. They only tactfully advised His Majesty that the previous emperor had always been simple, and His Majesty could follow the previous emperor's style. Long Shao looked at the Minister of Revenue in the court without batting an eyelid. The Minister of Revenue was an old man with a mustache and looked very shrewd. Of course, it was impossible for him to not be shrewd if he could become the Minister of Revenue. The Minister of Revenue was still capable, but he was too stingy. Money was more important than anything else. At that time, the previous emperor thought that it was probably a good idea to let such a person be the Minister of Revenue. It turned out that it was indeed a good idea. After this meticulous minister of revenue took office, the treasury became more and more plentiful day by day. Long Shao was very sure of his ability, but sometimes he felt that this old man was really annoying. For example, at this time, the Minister of Revenue had been talking non-stop for the time it took to brew a cup of tea since the start of the morning assembly. The central idea in his words was that he had no money. His Majesty, you need to be thrifty. Feeling the pressure from His Majesty getting lower and lower, many officials silently took a step back to stay away from this brave Minister of Revenue. As the saying goes, a new broom sweeps clean, not to mention that this was the most honorable one in the entire Tianlong dynasty. If he wants to build a palace, just let him do as he pleases. Anyway, Tianlong dynasty was strong and prosperous, and the treasury was abundant. Not to mention building a palace, even building an imperial city would not be a problem. Long Shao listened patiently for a while, and found that if he did not speak, the Minister of Revenue would probably be able to talk for about the time it took to brew a cup of tea. He finally could not help but interrupt him. Minister Qian, I have a few questions to ask, can you answer them? The Minister of Revenue was taken aback. He did not understand what relationship the emperor was trying to sell. He could only bow and say, Your Majesty, please ask. This subject will answer everything I know. Are there any of my people who do not have enough to eat and keep warm? Minister Qian was stunned. His Majesty's benevolence in the sea, the people of Tianlong have nothing to worry about. All right then, let me ask you again. Have I ever collected exorbitant taxes from the people? Minister Qian replied respectfully, His Majesty is benevolent and righteous. Never. Let me ask you again. How much did my national treasury earn last year? Reporting to Your Majesty, Minister Qian almost subconsciously reported a string of numbers. Only after he finished speaking did he realize that something was wrong. He hurriedly looked at His Majesty, who was seated above. Long Shao looked at him with a faint smile. With such a huge income and no large expenditure, Minister Qian, are you telling me that you have no money? Yao Shangshu's legs instantly went soft. He simply couldn't follow up with this. If he dared to say that he had no money, the emperor would issue an edict to confiscate his family's property after the court was dismissed. What happened to all the income from the national treasury last year? Minister Qian looked at His Majesty, who had dug a hole for him to jump into. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Reporting to Your Majesty, this old subject is old. I just miscalculated. Oh, Long Shao suddenly realized. That is to say, you have money, right? Minister Qian nodded with difficulty. Chapter 1276. Long Shao nodded with satisfaction. If that's the case, Minister Qian, what you said earlier, the national treasury is empty? Minister Qian showed a difficult smile. I was confused for a moment. Long Shao nodded and said directly, In that case, I will give Minister Qian full responsibility for the construction of the palace. Minister Qian raised his head in surprise. He did not understand why the emperor not only did not punish him, but also gave him such an important matter. Long Shao saw his expression and frowned slightly. Minister Qian, do you think there is a problem? Minister Qian quickly bowed. I have no problem. When Minister Qian returned to the queue, Long Shao looked around. Do you have anything else to report? The ministers looked at each other and shook their heads. Listening to His Majesty's words, they suddenly realized that as long as His Majesty was diligent and loved the people, he could let the people live a good life. If he wanted to spend money, he could spend it. Sky Dragon was so powerful, so it was not a problem for the emperor to show off a little. Therefore, when Long Shao once again ordered to find a famous botanist to plant a 10-mile peach blossom forest in the palace, no minister stood up to object. The whole world belonged to His Majesty. It was just planting some fresh peach blossoms. It was much better than some strange and cruel hobby. Long Shao was very satisfied with this. Although he would not change his mind even if these ministers objected, it was going so smoothly. After all, it was not that annoying, right? When autumn was about to pass and the palace in Sky Dragon's palace had begun to take shape, the ministers of Sky Dragon were once again shocked by their emperor. Their emperor was going to propose to Her Highness the eldest princess of Qing. Logically speaking, the Qing dynasty was a big country that could be compared to Sky Dragon. The famous eldest princess of Qing was said to be the sister of the emperor of Qing. Her status was also very noble. In that case, she was a good match for His Majesty. But the key was that His Majesty was going to propose in person. How could there be such a thing? The marriage between big countries had always been to send envoys to propose. No matter how noble the eldest princess was, it was enough to send a prince. A gentleman did not sit in a dangerous situation. How could the emperor of a country personally take risks? But His Majesty the Emperor of Sky Dragon was never someone who would listen to others' advice. No matter how much the ministers tried to persuade him, he even set the schedule for the meeting. Before he left, he had specially written a letter and had it sent urgently to the emperor of the Qing kingdom. Emperor Long Qing, who was no longer young, was speechless for a long time when he saw the letter of credence from the new emperor of Tianlong. How far was Tianlong from the Qing kingdom? If one were to ride a fast horse, it would take at least half a month. If they were to travel in a convoy, it would take at least a month. How could he bear to marry his sister off to such a faraway place? If Bao Chan went to Sky Dragon, she might not be able to come back for the rest of her life. However, the Emperor of Sky Dragon had personally come to propose. With such sincerity, Emperor Long Qing was afraid that refusing would cause the two countries to become enemies. After thinking for a while, he went to the Empress Dowager's palace. What? The well-preserved Empress Dowager sat beside the emperor and looked like someone of the same age. I don't agree. The Empress Dowager refused without thinking. I only have one daughter, Baotan. Your Majesty, can you bear to separate us? The emperor had always been filial. When he heard this, he immediately smiled bitterly and said that he did not dare. Chapter 1277. In his heart, he had never thought of letting Yongle go through a marriage. He only had one baby sister, and he had always wanted to choose the best husband for her in the whole of Qing Kingdom. Long Shao did not know that his future mother-in-law and brother-in-law were already thinking about how to reject him before he even set off. At the same time, Gu Xingyin also received the news from the system that Long Shao was coming to Qing Kingdom. He's coming to Qing Kingdom to ask for my hand in marriage? And not just for a marriage, but also specifically for me? Gu Xingyin was a little stunned. She was not surprised that Long Shao would do this, but felt that this method was too different from the original plot. System, is this really okay? She was a little hesitant. The system replied, Host, as long as Princess Yongle successfully marries into the Sky Dragon Empire, the power of Qing Kingdom will be strengthened. Furthermore, as mentioned in the plot, it brings even more powerful weapons and forging techniques to the Qing Kingdom, facilitating hundreds of years of peace between the Qing Kingdom and Tianlong. There are no problems with the host's mission. Hearing the system's words, Gu Xingyin was relieved. The emperor did not deliberately publicize this matter, but as the arrival of the Sky Dragon diplomatic corps approached, the emperor had to put the reception schedule on the court. The emperor did not say the purpose of the new emperor of Tianlong. He only said that the new emperor of Tianlong dynasty, who had just ascended the throne, would come to Qing Kingdom on the 15th of the next month, and let the Ministry of Rites prepare the highest standard of reception. Because he thought that he was going to reject the young emperor of Tianlong, Emperor Long Qing had some indescribable subtle feelings in his heart, and felt that he could make up for it in other ways. For example, when the Sky Dragon diplomatic corps arrived, he would personally go and receive them. Since the other party was also the emperor of a country, it would not be too demeaning for him to personally receive them. The whole of Qing Kingdom was excited about this matter. Although they did not know the purpose of the visit for the time being, the courtiers and people of Qing Kingdom also felt that this was a very exciting matter. To be able to make such a powerful emperor of Tianlong dynasty come to visit so solemnly, it also highlighted the strength of Qing Kingdom, did it not? On the day of the arrival of the Sky Dragon diplomatic corps, countless people of Qing Kingdom ran to the streets and stopped to watch. Emperor Long Qing was waiting for the arrival of the other party at the city gate in 12 jade robes. On this day, Countless citizens of Qing were excited because not only did they see the emperor they had never seen before, but they also saw the emperor of the distant Tianlong dynasty. There were also countless unmarried young girls of the Qing kingdom who secretly blushed. They had only heard that this young emperor was very young, but they had never heard that he looked so heroic and extraordinary. The officials who had come with Long Shao to the Qing kingdom had always held a grudge against their emperor's willful behavior. After seeing the Qing kingdom's thoughtful etiquette, they felt a little better. The banquet was specially prepared to welcome the heavenly dragon emissary. The day before the celestial dragon emissary arrived in the Qing kingdom, Emperor Long Qing quietly summoned Gu Shengyin into the palace and told her of this matter. In Emperor Long Qing's heart, his Bao Chan would definitely not be willing to marry to such a faraway place, so he did not even wait for Gu Shengyin's reply. He said directly, "Bao Chan, don't worry. I will not let that Emperor Tianlong succeed." Gu Shengyin, she could only helplessly lower her eyes and said, "It's up to you." Gao Lingji had been outside in the cold wind for a day and had been completely blown into a stupid branch. For chapters, there should be 2 more. Her mind was completely muddled. Only 6 chapters today. I'm really sorry, there will be 10,000 tomorrow. Moi moi moi. Chapter 1278. Emperor Long Qing raised the wine cup in his hand and personally toasted Long Shao. "Your Majesty, you are young and talented. You are truly admirable." Long Shao also quickly raised the wine cup in his hand. "Compared to you, Your Majesty, I can only be considered a junior. Your Majesty is overpraising me." This sentence made Emperor Long Qing very happy. He drank the wine in his cup in one gulp. In his heart, he admired the young emperor even more. Of course, he also became more vigilant. To become the ruler of a country at such a young age, it was rare that he did not have the arrogance of ordinary young people. Such a person was certainly not ordinary. Emperor Long Qing had heard some things about Sky Dragon. If the Emperor of Sky Dragon had no tricks up his sleeve, how could he control the whole of Sky Dragon in such a short time? Emperor Long Qing thought this in his heart, but he did not know that the Emperor of Sky Dragon, who had left a deep impression in his heart, was quietly focused on his own sister. From the moment Long Shao entered the hall, he had been looking at Gu Shengyin from the corner of his eye. Both of them were very noble people. Naturally, their seats were the closest to Emperor Long Qing. So, Long Shao could easily see the expression on Gu Shengyin's face. He saw the shock that could not be hidden when her gaze fell on his face. But it was only for a moment. After Gu Shengyin drank a cup of wine, her expression returned to its usual coldness. She did not look at him again. Long Shao was a little depressed. He was still thinking carefully. Was Yongle angry? Yes, he had treated her like that and was unwilling to tell her his identity. Now that he had suddenly appeared, it would certainly cause her dissatisfaction. But a look of determination flashed through Long Zhao's eyes. Dissatisfaction? It was fine. He still had endless time in the future to make her satisfied. He could not wait to settle the relationship between the two of them. He wanted her to belong to him. Emperor Long Qing took a look and happened to see the young Emperor of Sky Dragon looking at his sister. The emotion in his eyes moved him. At the same time, Emperor Long Qing was confused. Was this the first time the Emperor of Sky Dragon came to Qing Kingdom? Why did it seem like he had seen Bao Chan before? "Qing Emperor." Long Shao suddenly stood up and called out to him. Emperor Long Qing had a bad premonition. He instinctively wanted to say something to interrupt Long Shao, but he did not succeed. "I have come to the Qing Kingdom this time because I want the Sky Dragon and the Qing Kingdom to be on good terms forever," Long Shao said with a smile. As soon as he said this, the ministers on the Sky Dragon's side were still fine. After all, they had already known about their Majesty's plan. However, the Qing Kingdom exploded. The courtiers discussed fervently, all saying that this was the case. No wonder Sky Dragon would suddenly send an envoy to Qing Kingdom. As for the marriage alliance, most of the ministers' first reaction was that it was a good thing. The Great Qing Dynasty and the Sky Dragon Dynasty were among the top powers on this continent. The Qing Kingdom was rich, and the Sky Dragon was famous for his powerful battle prowess. If the Qing kingdom could form a marriage alliance with Tianlong, then the two countries could exchange what they needed. This was, without question, a very good thing. Only Emperor Longqing's expression changed slightly when he heard these words. He really didn't think that the Emperor of Sky Dragon would actually say this in front of so many people. Chapter 1279. Emperor Longqing thought to himself. Fortunately, His Majesty didn't say it out loud. He wanted Baochan. If he said it, he might be able to deal with it. But it was clear that his thinking was too simple. Because soon, Long Shao opened his mouth again. I am willing to marry your country's eldest princess Yongle as the empress. When these words were said, the entire hall was silent. The officials of Qing Kingdom were all silent. No wonder they didn't see any joy on His Majesty's face. Sky Dragon had taken a fancy to the eldest princess. Who was the eldest princess? She was the pearl of Qing Kingdom. She was His Majesty's treasure. It turned out that Sky Dragon's people had such thoughts. Many officials felt uncomfortable in their hearts. Was the most beautiful and noble eldest princess of Qing Kingdom going to be held in the arms of a foreigner? Even if the other party was the emperor, they still felt uncomfortable. While the officials of Qing Kingdom were suffering in their hearts, Sky Dragon's envoys were very satisfied. At first, they didn't want His Majesty to personally go to Qing Kingdom. They felt that this would lower His Majesty's status. But when it was time to leave, perhaps because they knew that this matter was inevitable, the resistance in their hearts lessened a lot. Moreover, the people who followed Long Shao on the diplomatic mission were all his trusted subordinates. No matter what, they would support his decision. This mood completely changed when they saw eldest princess Yongle sitting in the hall. No one had ever seen the rumored eldest princess Yongle. However, when all the heavenly dragon ambassadors saw Gu Shengyin for the first time, they knew in their hearts that this must be eldest princess Yongle of the Qing Kingdom. Other than such a beauty, such bearing, and such charm, who else could bear the title of the most beautiful woman in the world? No wonder His Majesty was willing to come personally to ask for her hand in marriage. For such a beauty, so what if he lowered his status for her? Indeed, His Majesty had good taste. Sky Dragon's envoys thought so. Emperor Longqing could no longer maintain the smile on his face. How could he reply to His Majesty, the Emperor of Sky Dragon, saying such words under such circumstances? If he refused in public, there would be no hope for a good relationship between the two countries. But if he didn't refuse? He felt that his sister would not be willing to marry Baochan off so rashly. Emperor Longqing coughed lightly and was about to ask for a delay in this matter. Long Shao looked gently at Gu Xin, who had been glaring at him unhappily ever since he finished speaking. It was so beautiful. This kind of expression was much better than coldly ignoring me. He stared at Gu Shengyin without blinking, but his words were said to everyone. This one can swear that in this life, I will marry the eldest princess as my empress. My only wish is to grow old with the eldest princess. There will only be one person in the harem. His words shocked everyone. These words were already shocking enough. Even an ordinary wealthy family would have 1 or 2 concubines. This dignified ruler of the world actually said that there was only one person in the harem. If the officials of the Qing Kingdom were only shocked, then the officials of Tianlong were terrified. How could their emperor be so willful? What does the royal family value the most? Such words were simply unfilial to the ancestors. But in such an occasion, these officials could not kneel and beg the emperor to take back his words like in the court. Outside, especially in front of other countries, the dignity of their emperor could not be offended. Chapter 1280. The officials of Tianlong could only look at their emperor anxiously. They had never hoped so earnestly that their emperor would go back on his word. Another group of officials looked eagerly at the Qing Kingdom. At first, they were proud of their emperor's good taste. Now, they wanted the Qing Kingdom to refuse. As long as the Qing Kingdom was unwilling to marry the eldest princess to Tianlong, then their emperor's promise would be useless. But Emperor Longqing was silent. Initially, he wanted to refuse, But after hearing the words of this young monarch Tianlong, he swallowed his words back down. No matter what would happen in the future at this moment, the emperor could say that he did not want a harem. It was enough to see how important Bao Chan was in his heart. He could find a talented and handsome husband for Bao Chan in the future. He could also use his status to force the emperor not to take concubines. But he could not use his power to force the emperor to love Bao Chan alone. The emperor looked around the hall and saw his sister glaring at the emperor of the Heavenly Dragon Empire. He suddenly had a thought. Under everyone's gaze, Long Qingfu coughed lightly and said with a smile, "Yongle is indebted to your majesty. But Yongle has been spoiled since she was young. I can't make the decision for her." Whether it was the officials of Tianlong or the officials of Qin Kingdom, they were all confused. What did this mean? Refuse? But it didn't seem like it. The one who reacted the fastest was Long Xiao. Almost as soon as Emperor Long Qing finished speaking, he said loudly, "Your Majesty, you mean that eldest Princess Yongle's marriage can be decided by herself? If eldest Princess Yongle agrees, will your Majesty agree?" Emperor Long Qing nodded. Long Zhao's words caused everyone's eyes to focus on Gu Shengyin again. Gu Shengyin secretly cursed him for being cunning. Long Xiao looked at her affectionately and said gently, "Eldest Princess Yongle, what do you think of this matter?" Gu Shengyin thought to herself, "I really want to refuse you and let you suffer the consequences of your own actions." But on the surface, she only stood up leisurely. Her gorgeous sleeves fluttered slightly, and her eyes turned. She was indescribably charming. Everyone in the hall stared at her with their eyes wide open. Beauties were like this. Even if it was an ordinary action, when she did it, she would have an indescribable charm compared to others. Gu Shengyin did not show the slightest shyness of being proposed to. She looked straight at Long Xiao without dodging and opened her mouth like the first cry of an oriole. "Just now, Emperor Tianlong said that if you take me as your empress, I will be the only one in your harem?" Long Xiao nodded without hesitation. "Of course." Gu Shengyin pressed on. "What if His Majesty breaks his promise?" Long Xiao met her gaze and said firmly, "That won't happen." Gu Shengyin pressed on. "I have never believed in empty promises. Why don't you make an oath? If you go back on your word, I will return to the Qin Kingdom in peace. How about it?" These words were really shocking. It was rare for commoners to divorce, let alone the empress of a country. The ministers of Tianlong instinctively wanted to interrupt. Long Xiao stared at Gu Shengyin. He was not surprised to see a trace of provocation in her eyes. She said that on purpose to force him to give in. Chapter 1281. Long Xiao suddenly laughed out loud. He said in a clear voice, "Why not?" Plop. Immediately, a courtier from Sky Dragon knelt down to Long Xiao. "Your Majesty, you can't. This kind of thing, not to mention what would happen in the future, if it was spread out, others would only think that their emperor was blinded by lust and didn't know anything when he saw a beauty." Long Xiao ignored him and looked at Gu Shengyin instead. "I can agree to this. I wonder what other conditions your highness has?" The courtiers from Sky Dragon felt that they might need to see a doctor, while the courtiers from Qin Kingdom were full of pride. Their eldest princess was peerlessly beautiful. Their princess was mighty and domineering. Their princess couldn't be more handsome. Of course. Gu Shengyin slanted her eyes and roared, "Your Majesty, don't tell me you think that I can be married to you so easily?" Long Xiao was overjoyed. What did this mean? It was almost an agreement. As for the meaning of Gu Shengyin's words, betrothal gifts. Give. Long Xiao opened his mouth and said without hesitation, "I am willing to give these two things as betrothal gifts for marrying your Majesty." He raised his hand, and a servant behind him held a tray and presented it to Gu Shengyin. Everyone had a curious look on their faces. Even the Sky Dragon's envoys didn't know when their emperor had prepared these things. However, what could be on such a small tray? Gu Shengyin lifted the bright yellow silk on the tray. After seeing what was inside, her eyes narrowed. She covered the yellow silk in her hand again and looked at Long Xiao. "Your Majesty, are you serious?" Long Xiao laughed heartily. "Of course I am serious." "Good. Gu Shengyin motioned for the servant to pass the things to Emperor Long Qing. Then I will wait for your majesty in Qing Kingdom. After Gu Shengyin said this, she bowed to Emperor Long Qing. My sister is not feeling well. I will leave first. The courtiers were speechless. Is it really okay to lie through your teeth like this? Long Xiao looked at Gu Shengyin's back and did not say anything. When Emperor Long Qing saw what was on the tray, his hands trembled and he almost dropped the wine cup in his hand. He personally checked it carefully and found that he was not mistaken. This is the world's most advanced forging method, and even the blueprint of Sky Dragon's most advanced weapon. Emperor Long Qing felt that the thing in his hand was a little hot. He roughly understood why Bao Chan had agreed so decisively. Covering the things in his hands, Emperor Long Qing's smiling face became serious. Your Majesty Sky Dragon, are you serious? Long Xiao also restrained his expression. I've never played around. Emperor Long Qing sighed inwardly and finally raised his wine cup. Let us congratulate Qing Kingdom and Sky Dragon. Let us help each other and make a lasting friendship. Long Xiao raised the wine cup in his hand with a smile and drank it in one gulp. Although the courtiers did not understand what was going on between the two of them, they understood that the Emperor of Sky Dragon probably took out something extraordinary to make Qing Kingdom's attitude change so quickly. Everyone scratched their ears and cheeks and wanted to know what Sky Dragon took out. However, the people involved kept their mouths tightly shut about this matter. As soon as the banquet was over, Emperor Long Qing urgently summoned the courtiers of the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Works to the study to discuss matters. Chapter 1282. Are you really willing to let your sister marry to a place so far away? In the Empress Dowager's palace, the servants had all left. The Empress Dowager questioned the Emperor mercilessly. Emperor Long Qing didn't say anything. In fact, when he saw the two things that Sky Dragon took out, he knew that the marriage between the two countries was set. He couldn't let go of the opportunity to improve the strength of the whole Qing Kingdom. He couldn't let go of it. Gu Shengyin sat quietly on the side. Every time she wanted to speak for Emperor Long Qing, the Empress Dowager gave her a cold stare, which made her have to shut up. Emperor Long Qing obviously knew the Empress Dowager's temper. He didn't say anything until the Empress Dowager finished venting. Mother, the Empress Dowager said angrily, don't call me now. Emperor Long Qing looked at his sister helplessly. Gu Xin slowly walked to the Empress Dowager's side, took one of her hands, and shook it gently. Mother. The Empress Dowager squinted at her. Gu Shengyin quickly said, don't blame my brother. I was willing to do this. The Empress Dowager actually knew what was going on. What happened in the court quickly spread to her ears. Of course, she also knew that her son put the choice in her daughter's hands. But her daughter would soon be married and couldn't see. She couldn't bear to scold her, so she could only scold her son. Hearing Gu Shengyin's words, the Empress Dowager's tears finally fell. My Baochen, why is her life so hard? The Empress Dowager held Gu Shengyin tightly in her arms. Gu Shengyin sighed secretly and had to say slowly, I don't feel wronged. He promised me so many conditions and promised that I would be the only one in the harem. Mother, I really don't feel wronged. The Empress Dowager's tears gradually stopped. Although the other party was very sincere, and the Empress Dowager knew that the princess of the royal family was born with more responsibilities than others, she was still very reluctant when it came to her daughter. She had been holding her daughter in the palm of her hand for more than 10 years. He was about to follow the others to a completely unfamiliar place. If it were in the Qing Kingdom, anywhere, the Empress Dowager would have the confidence to take care of her daughter. But in Sky Dragon, even if her Baochan was wronged, she might not even know. Gu Shengyin gently leaned her head on the Empress Dowager's shoulder and said softly, Mother, don't worry. Your daughter will live a happy life. This was something she was sure of. That man would never let her down. On this side, the Empress Dowager's palace, which was specially used to entertain the heavenly dragon, was also in an uproar. The Tianlong officials who had come with Long Xiao only found out what their emperor had sacrificed in order to marry the eldest princess of the Qing Kingdom after they returned from the banquet. The most advanced forging method, The blueprint for the weapon with the most destructive power. No wonder the Qing emperor had such an expression. Those ministers felt that their majesty was not marrying an empress, but inviting an ancestor back, right? There were also some ministers who wanted to go further. Their emperor cared too much about this eldest princess of the Qing kingdom. The loyalty of an emperor was not a good sign. Chapter 1283. Long Shao frowned as he listened to the official's earnest admonishment. Some even boldly took out the example of the previous dynasty's monarch's favored concubine. Pa! The crisp sound of a cup breaking rang out, startling everyone. Enough! Long Shao shouted in a deep voice. I never need others to comment on what I do. If you have the free time to pay attention to my private affairs, why don't you spend some time on your own affairs? Every one of you is pointing fingers at my decisions. Do you think that you can be a better emperor than me? With these words, all the officials in the room knelt down. For a moment, there was complete silence. Long Shao said in his heart, this bunch of fellows just wouldn't be satisfied if they didn't make him angry. He listened and tolerated them nicely, but they were going to take a mile after taking an inch. When he was really angry, these officials who had just been making impassioned speeches were all trembling with fear. I sincerely want to marry eldest Princess Yongle. What are you trying to do by obstructing me? If I hear even the slightest bit of bad rumors about the eldest princess outside, do as you deem fit, Long Shao said coldly. Cold sweat seeped out of the foreheads of the officials present. His Majesty was so protective of his food that he could not even hear the slightest rumor about the future empress. No matter what the officials of Tianlong thought, and no matter how reluctant the Empress Dowager of Qing was, this matter was settled. As the noble eldest princess of Qing, Gu Shengyin naturally could not just casually follow them to Tianlong. The Tianlong emissaries would first return to the country, and then on a date set by both sides, they would send a grand wedding procession to welcome their future empress of Tianlong back. The night before the Tianlong emissaries left, Gu Shengyin and Long Shao met. You're amazing. You've made me go in circles. Gu Shengyin snorted coldly. Her expression was very calm, and there was no joy or anger in her tone. Long Shao could not guess what she was thinking for a moment. This was also the first time the two of them met in the hall. It was also the first time the two of them met after his true identity was exposed. Long Shao was a little helpless. I can be sure that I have never played you. Bao Chan, he called out her name softly. I've never lied to you. He was just hiding some things. Gu Shengyin was silent. She thought about it carefully and realized that it was true. Long Shao even told him that Xiao Xiao was not his real name before he left. Gu Shengyin regained her senses and looked at him. You spent so much to marry me. Aren't you afraid that others will call you a fatuous ruler? Long Shao smiled. How can I stop someone else's mouth from growing? As for whether he is a fatuous ruler or not, time will prove it. Gu Shengyin snorted. I don't care if others call you a fatuous ruler or not. I just feel that I'm going to become a femme fatale. Long Zhao's face immediately became serious. Bao Chan, don't worry. It doesn't matter what others say about me. If anyone dares to talk bad about you, they must be tired of talking. Gu Shengyin was speechless. Where did this guy learn these sweet nothings from? She was happy in her heart, but she just pretended to snort casually. Unexpectedly, she felt a warmth behind her, and a warm body approached her. I really miss you, Bao Chan. Chapter 1284. Perhaps because he knew Gu Shengyin's bottom line, Long Shao did not hug her directly. He only stood closely behind her. The two of them did not touch at all, but they were very close. Gu Shengyin could even feel his breath on her ear when he spoke. Gu Shengyin did not speak. Long Shao did not seem to expect her answer. He said to himself, since the last time we met, I have been thinking about you since I returned to Tianlong. Every day, I have been thinking about Bao Chan. Gu Shengyin pursed her lips and did not say anything. Long Shao continued. After taking control of the situation in the dynasty, I immediately made the decision to go to Qing. All the officials stopped me, saying that this was too rash and dangerous, but I still insisted on coming. Because I really wanted to see you. Then, as I said, the next time we meet, I will tell you my real name. My name is Long Xiao. Gu Xingyin quietly listened to his words and suddenly asked, have you ever thought about what if I don't agree to your proposal, or if I already have someone I like? Long Xiao paused and then said, I have enough confidence that no country can refuse the betrothal gifts I take out. Gu Xingyin was silent. Indeed, the two things that Long Xiao took as betrothal gifts could not be measured by their value. Not to mention the eldest princess, even 10 princesses might not be worth their value. If I am really rejected, Long Xiao paused, then I will be a bandit and take my empress back. Gu Xingyin raised her head because of these words. She really did not expect Long Xiao to say such a thing. Don't joke. Long Xiao only smiled and did not say anything. He said that he would never lie to her or joke in front of her. If Qin was really unwilling to marry the eldest princess to Tianlong, he might really use force to solve the problem. It's getting late. You should go back, Gu Xingyin suddenly said. Long Xiao was a little reluctant, but he also knew that it was not suitable for him to stay here for long. Just as he was about to leave, his gaze suddenly froze as if he had seen something inconceivable. Gu Xingyin didn't hear a reply, so she turned around in confusion. Then she felt something move around her neck, and a jade pendant hidden under her robe was taken out. Long Xiao's eyes suddenly became pleasantly surprised. He looked at Gu Xingyin with shining eyes. Bao Chan, you have been wearing it all this time? Gu Xingyin, how did he see it? He had kept it so secretively. She maintained an indifferent expression on her face. I just feel that this jade pendant is not bad. It suits my clothes today. An uncontrollable smile spread from the corner of Long Xiao's mouth, and the corners of his eyes and brows were full of smiles. He glanced at Gu Xingyin and felt that he shouldn't expose the excuse she had found in her panic. Her clothes today clearly did not suit this jade pendant. Long Xiao walked in front of Gu Xingyin. When Gu Xingyin was caught off guard, he wrapped his arm around her waist. What are you doing? Gu Xingyin was shocked. Unexpectedly, the other party only hugged her for a moment before letting go. A farewell hug. Bao Chan, wait for me to welcome you back to Tianlong. A warm touch touched her forehead and flashed by. It was so fast that she almost thought it was an illusion. Chapter 1285. The envoys from Sky Dragon finally left. But the whole palace was busy because of this. They had to start preparing for Princess Yongla's wedding. Princess Yongla's status was already first class, and this time she was going to Sky Dragon to become the queen of a country. The Empress Dowager loved her daughter, so she was picky and at least doubled the dowry that she had prepared. Emperor Longqing also felt sorry for his sister, so he could only make up for it with the dowry. All kinds of rare treasures were put into Gu Xingyin's palace. It was said that when the officials from the Ministry of Rites counted the dowry of Princess Yongla, they even suspected that she had emptied the palace's treasury. Everyone was busy, especially the servants who were going to follow Gu Xingyin to Sky Dragon. Only Gu Xingyin, the main character, had the most leisure time. There was someone to do everything for her. The only thing that made her unhappy was that from time to time some noble ladies would look at her with pity, as if it was a terrible and sad thing for her to marry into Sky Dragon. Gu Xingyin didn't want to go again after attending 2 banquets in the capital. She was really fed up with those self-righteous eyes. Anyway, her status was high enough. If she didn't want to go, she could just reject it. There was no need to find any reason. In this very boring situation, Gu Xingyin finally remembered the mission goal that she had forgotten. Speaking of which, she hadn't seen Ying Qi since she was taken away by the Shadow Guards. At first, the system would dutifully report her recent situation. Every time, it was nothing more than what the Shadow Guards had done to her and what she had become. Later, Gu Xingyin simply told the system that if Ying Qi didn't do anything strange, it didn't need to tell her these things. It affected her appetite. It was true. The Shadow Guards' interrogation methods were really clever. Sometimes, just hearing the description made Gu Xingyin feel a little scared. Ying Yi, take me to see her. Ying Yi was a little hesitant. Gu Xingyin asked, is there a problem? Ying Qi bowed and said, it's Ying Qi. Her current appearance is a little unsightly. Was he afraid that he would be scared? Gu Xingyin waved her hand. It doesn't matter. Let's go and have a look. Yi took Gu Xingyin to a dark room. This dark room was very big, but it was very dark. There were only a few lonely oil lamps with bean-sized flames. Against the cold gleam of some of the torture instruments, it was rather eerie. Gu Xingyin slowly walked in. Her long and gorgeous dress dragged on the ground, becoming the only light in this dark room. It was a cage like a small iron house. Most of them were empty. When they arrived at one of the small iron houses, Yi made a gesture, and a shadow guard in the same gray clothes opened the door. In the dim light, Gu Xingyin could see a skinny figure lying in the corner of the small iron house. If it weren't for the occasional twitching of her body, she would look like a lifeless corpse. Gu Xingyin looked at her quietly. Just from her back, even she couldn't recognize that this was the Ing Chi who looked exactly like her. Yi stood beside Gu Xingyin and said, "Ing Chi, master is here." The figure slowly moved and then raised her head. Gu Xingyin sucked in a sharp breath. This face, how did this face become like this? Chapter 1286. It wasn't a deliberate disfigurement, but Ing Chi's current face was really difficult to describe. If one looked closely, it seemed that her facial features were still the same as before, but if one looked a little more closely, they would feel that something was wrong. His entire face was like a different face. His facial features were forced to be put together, making people feel that it was not real at all. It was a little scary. Moreover, the skin on her face had begun to fall off in some places. Gu Xingyin looked at this face with some surprise, suddenly thinking of the medicine she had given Ing Chi. Yes, the substitute needed to maintain the exact same figure and appearance as the master, so the white jade pill could not be stopped. If it was stopped, the backlash from the body was not a joke. Ing Chi seemed to be even a little confused, but the moment she saw Gu Xingyin, she sobered up. She almost screamed at Gu Xingyin, "Who are you? Who are you? How dare you pretend to be the imperial palace?" Gu Xingyin was silent. She turned her head to look at Yi, who had his head down. "What's the matter with her?" Yi didn't dare to raise his head, reporting to Master, Ing Chi couldn't bear the punishment of the shadow guards and has gone crazy. Crazy? This was unexpected by Gu Xingyin. As a shadow guard, they had received all kinds of special training from an early age, so their willpower was quite amazing. Gu Xingyin didn't believe that Ing Chi would go crazy so easily. She didn't step forward, but stayed beside Yi and quietly asked, "Who are you?" Puma. Ing Chi was still lying on the ground. Hearing this question, she seemed puzzled, but soon straightened up and her face became reserved. "This princess is the most respected Princess Yongla of the Qin Kingdom." Ing Chi didn't know that this kind of attitude, coupled with her strange face, was really unbearable to look at. However, among the only two people in the audience, Yi lowered his head and didn't dare to make a sound, while Gu Xingyin had no interest in talking to her. "Have someone bring a mirror," Gu Xingyin said to Yi. Yi didn't understand what his master wanted to do, but he still dutifully blew a whistle. Soon, someone came over. Gu Xingyin took the mirror that had just been delivered and threw it directly in front of Ing Chi. "Ing Chi, take a look in the mirror and see what you look like now. Who would think that you are the noble eldest Princess Yongla when they see you?" Ing Chi saw the mirror and quieted down. Her slightly blackened fingers fumbled for the mirror on the ground, and then her face appeared in the mirror. But the next moment, the mirror smashed against the metal wall and shattered. "No, no, no, this isn't me, this isn't me, this isn't me, this isn't me." Ing Chi seemed to be on the verge of collapse as he shouted desperately. She shouted for a while and wanted to pick up the mirror again to take another look. However, the mirror had already been smashed by her and could no longer reflect anything. Her hands groped on the ground anxiously, piecing together several mirror fragments. She wanted to see her own appearance again, and she didn't even care that there were several bloody cuts on her hands. Gu Xingyin looked on coldly from the side. "Ing Chi, this princess doesn't care if you are really crazy or not. It has no meaning to me, and it has no meaning to you. Because in this life, don't even think about escaping revenge. Chapter 1287. The movements of In Chi's hands slowly stopped. However, she still ignored Gu Xingyin. Just like before, she sat there with her head lowered, as if she had completely ignored the two people in front of her. Gu Xingyin glanced at Ying Yi and said, "Let's go." Ying Yi nodded silently and the metal lock was once again locked, restoring the place to silence. After Gu Xingyin and the others had walked for a long time, and not a single sound of footsteps could be heard anymore, In Chi suddenly grabbed the mirror fragment on the ground and was about to wipe it across her neck. Ding! A copper coin flew out of nowhere and hit In Chi's hand that was holding the mirror fragment. Her hand loosened and the fragment fell to the ground. A deep voice came from the darkness, "In Chi, Master didn't say you were going to die, so don't even think about it." Soon, a gray-robed figure appeared from the darkness and cleaned up the broken pieces and other things in the iron prison. Out of the dark prison, Gu Xingyin breathed a sigh of relief. The atmosphere inside was too depressing. "In Chi's face makes me uncomfortable," Gu Xingyin said with a frown. In Yi nodded, indicating that he understood. In Chi's face didn't matter anymore. "You also know that in a few days I will be going to Sky Dragon City. When the time comes, you will definitely be coming with me." Gu Xingyin said faintly, "As for In Chi, deal with her quickly. Remember, don't let her live too happily. If she's happy, I won't be happy." In Yi bowed his head, yes. In fact, he didn't know why his master was so against In Chi. Their master's personality, to be honest, could be said to be soft-hearted and soft-hearted, treating the shadow guards with compassion and compassion, but when it came to the matter of In Chi, he was ruthless to the point of making them bristle with anger. If it were up to him, In Chi, who was disloyal, he would have just killed her. Why bother torturing her? In the eyes of those who didn't know, In Chi was just a subordinate with bad intentions. Little did they know that she had once succeeded. Gu Xingyin could not tell anyone about this. Shadow One was very efficient. That night, Gu Xingyin received a system notification. In Chi's eyes were gouged out, his tongue was cut off, his ears were disabled, his limbs were broken, and his entire face was peeled off while he was still alive. Unfortunately, her life was being kept alive by someone using top-notch medicinal herbs. Even if she wanted to die, she couldn't. Within half a month, a terrifying beggar appeared on the streets of the capital. If she was an ordinary beggar, some kind-hearted people would give her some money and food. However, this person was truly too frightening. Under his messy hair was a hideous face with scars that blurred his facial features. Many children were scared to tears. Many commoners threw vegetable leaves and rotten eggs at her, wanting to chase away this terrifying beggar. Even though this beggar couldn't move, there would always be someone who would force-feed her in the middle of the night so that she wouldn't starve to death. In Chi finally understood what it meant to live a life worse than death, and what it meant to beg for death. Compared to today, the days in the dark prison were simply heaven, not to mention when she was still her master's substitute. She regretted it, she really regretted it. But at this time, what was the use of regretting it? She could only hide in a dark corner every day, waiting for the day when her master would be in a good mood and show her mercy. He wanted to let himself die a quick death. Chapter 1288. The next year, when the hot summer passed and the leaves began to turn yellow, the messengers of Tianlong came to Daqing again. But it was different from the last time. This time, they came to welcome their empress. Long Shao still followed. The emperor of Tianlong came to Daqing for the second time to show his love for his empress. On this day, Emperor Long Qing and the Empress Dowager personally sent Gu Xingyin's carriage out of the city gate. At the city gate, Gu Xingyin, dressed in a red dress, got out of the carriage with the help of her maids. She kowtowed 3 times to the Empress Dowager and Emperor Long Qing. The Empress Dowager held back the tears that were about to flow out and helped her up with a smile. Emperor Long Qing's eyes were also red. He raised his sister like a daughter. How could he bear to let her go at this moment? Moreover, in his heart, Bao Chan married for Daqing. Emperor Long Qing did not think that Gu Xingyin really chose to marry Long Shao because she liked him. Gu Xingyin, It was a beautiful misunderstanding. The auspicious time has come. Long Xiao got off the horse and walked to Gu Shengyin. Let's go. Gu Shengyin lowered her head slightly and walked toward the carriage. Long Xiao looked at the Empress Dowager and Emperor Long Qing in front of him and bowed to them. He ignored their shocked gazes and said to himself, Imperial Mother and Big Brother, please don't worry. I will definitely take good care of Bao Chan and not let her suffer any grievances. After he finished, he bowed again and turned to walk toward the carriage. The Empress Dowager and Emperor Long Qing looked at each other and saw a trace of relief in each other's eyes. The Emperor of Tianlong could put down his status and bow to them. It showed that he really cared about Bao Chan in his heart. Otherwise, there was no need for him to put on an act in front of everyone at this point. I hope he can really do what he said. In the second year of Bao Yuan, Emperor Tianzi went to Daqing in person and married Empress Minghui. In the 9th month of the same year, Celestial Empress got married in the palace. The emperor was overjoyed and pardoned the world. In the 4th year of Bao Yuan, there was an official who advised Tianzi Emperor to expand his harem on the grounds that the empress had been in the palace for 2 years and had no children. Tianzi Emperor was enraged and rebuked in front of the court. When I asked for the empress hand in marriage, I made a vow that I would only have the empress in my harem. By forcing me to take in a concubine, are you forcing me to become a person who doesn't keep my promises? His intentions are worthy of death. At that time, the 9 ministers who had knelt down and begged Tianzi Emperor to take in a concubine were all stripped of their official positions and would never be employed again. After that, no one dared to talk about this in the imperial court. In the 5th year of Bao Yuan, Celestial Empress was diagnosed with pregnancy and the entire nation celebrated. On the 6th day of the 6th month in the 6th year of Bao Yuan, Emperor and Empress gave birth to a son in Chao Huang Palace. Emperor was overjoyed and named him Chao. Time was a wonderful thing. It could make many people accustomed to things that they thought were impossible. For example, the people of Sky Dragon City all knew that their emperor and empress were deeply in love with each other. They were like a normal couple, and no one else could come between them. What? You don't believe me? You say that all emperors have 3 palaces and 6 courtyards? Have you heard of the Chao Huang Palace, which is even more magnificent than the emperor's bedroom? That was the residence that His Majesty had specially built for the empress. Have you heard of the 10-li peach blossom forest in the palace? Sky Dragon City's climate was not suitable for peach blossoms to grow. His Majesty had gathered hundreds of gardeners and racked their brains for hundreds of days and nights before finally finding a way to let peach blossoms grow in Sky Dragon City. Because the Empress loved peach blossoms the most. Chapter 1289. Today was the grand wedding of Qi Manor's heir, and there were many guests in Qi Manor. Princess Duan Yun was dressed in brocade and was surrounded by countless women, enjoying the compliments of these people to her heart's content. Because she was the princess of the Celestial Empress, the most distinguished woman in this banquet. Your Highness, you look really good in this red cloud satin. A noblewoman beside her smiled and complimented. Another noblewoman was not to be outdone and quickly said, Of course, only Your Highness can afford to wear red cloud satin. It is said that this is a tribute, but we have never seen it before. The people around him immediately echoed his sentiments. Princess Duan Yun smiled reservedly, as though she didn't take these compliments to heart. At this moment, someone among the women said, Speaking of red cloud satin, I have seen eldest Princess Yongle wear it once. She is truly a fairy that has descended to the mortal world. The bustling banquet fell silent for a moment because of this special name. The smile on Princess Duan Yun's face also disappeared. She looked around, and many people lowered their heads. Just now, there were too many people talking, so she didn't know who mentioned eldest Princess Yongle. This name seemed to have become a tacit taboo in this capital city. Princess Duan Yun said lazily, I will take a walk in the garden. After speaking, she didn't look at everyone's reaction and left with the help of the maid. Princess Duan Yun was very unhappy. The reason for her unhappiness was that she didn't know who said eldest Princess Yongle just now. She didn't like this aunt since she was young. The two of them were about the same age, so they should have a very good relationship. However, she was the princess of the celestial empress, the true proud daughter of the heavens. As long as the princess of the imperial family was mentioned, the first name that came to everyone's mind would only be eldest Princess Yongle. Eldest Princess Yongle's rank was higher than hers, she was prettier than her, and she was more favored than her. All the benefits in this world were taken by her. How could Princess Duanyun accept this? Fortunately, so what if her aunt was favored? In the end, wasn't she still used as a tool for a marriage alliance and married to another country? It was said that the emperor said that he wouldn't have a harem. However, what right did an empress who was far away and had no one to rely on have? Princess Duanyun sneered. Her aunt had been in the limelight for more than 10 years, but in terms of marriage she was far inferior to her. She had a good relationship with the prince consort. When she gave birth to the child, she generously let the servant girl by her side serve the prince consort. Who in the aristocratic family didn't praise her for being virtuous? In the princess's residence, who would dare to go against his will? As she thought of this, her mood became much better. At this moment, a palace servant trotted in front of her. "Your Highness, there is a decree from the palace for you to return to the palace." Princess Duanyun was puzzled. What was so urgent? But she didn't dare to tarry. She hurriedly informed her master and rode a horse and carriage into the palace. The palace servant led her directly to Imperial Grandmother's palace. Before she reached the palace, Princess Duanyun heard a burst of laughter. Princess Duanyun felt strange in her heart. Ever since Aunt Yongle got married, she rarely saw a smile on Imperial Grandmother's face. Thinking of this, she asked the palace servant to report and walked in herself. As soon as she entered the hall, her gaze was attracted by the woman who was dressed like a woman sitting next to her imperial grandmother. Time seemed to treat her exceptionally well and didn't leave any traces on her body. No, there were still traces. She, who was already a married woman, had lost her immaturity. Compared to back then, she had a trace of charm. Princess Duanyun's eyes widened. Aunt Yongle, why was she here? Chapter 1290. The people in the palace also saw Princess Duanyun, who had just entered. The empress, who was sitting below, saw her daughter and quickly said, "Duanyun, come and greet your Aunt Yongle." Princess Duanyun came back to her senses. She took 2 steps forward and bowed to Gu Shengyin. When she lowered her head, she saw the man sitting next to her father. Princess Duanyun was shocked. She was a princess of the royal family. Although she was shocked, she didn't lose her composure. After Princess Duanyun bowed, she sat quietly next to her mother. Only then did she have the chance to look at the man. The more she looked, the more shocked Princess Duanyun was. Back then, the Emperor of Tianlong personally came to the Qin kingdom to ask for Aunt Yongle's hand in marriage. Of course, she had seen the Emperor of Tianlong at that time. Although many years had passed, some people's unique demeanor would be unforgettable after seeing it once. Why would the Emperor of Tianlong and Aunt Yongle, who was already the Empress, appear here? Princess Duanyun was full of doubts. Finally, she found an opportunity to go to the washroom and ask her mother, "Why is Aunt Yongle here?" When the Empress heard this, she had a complicated expression on her face. She seemed to find it hard to understand and also had a trace of envy. She opened her mouth and said, "Duanyun, after seeing your Aunt Yongle, Mother realized that some people are born to be envied." Her tone had a trace of emotion. This time, the Emperor of Tianlong was afraid that your aunt would miss her hometown, so he accompanied her back to the Qin kingdom to see your grandmother and father. The Empress wiped her hands with a clean silk handkerchief and finished her last sentence. Imperial Mother once thought that being able to sit in this position was already the pinnacle of women in the world. But Imperial Mother knows that Imperial Mother has never had a place in your Imperial Father's heart. Your Aunt Yongle is the one who has truly reached the peak of what a woman can achieve. Princess Duanyun silently held the Empress' hand and walked out. Dinner was eaten in the Empress Dowager's palace. This time, Gu Shengyin and Long Shao didn't make a big fuss. They didn't want to be too ostentatious. Only the Empress Dowager, the Emperor Empress, and a few princes and princesses were eating together. In such an occasion, even if it was Princess Duan Yun, she could only sit below. Eat a little more and drink a bowl of soup, okay? Even a Chao eats more than you. Although Long Xiao frowned, his tone was extremely gentle. Gu Shengyin was silent for 2 seconds. In the end, she still took the soup from him. Last bowl. She looked very unhappy. Long Xiao's eyebrows curved. Okay. She looked on silently. Her uncle, who was the ruler of a country, really only had eyes for her aunt. He didn't care about the gazes of others at all. He knew all of his aunt's favorite dishes, and he would even personally pick up food and ladle soup for his aunt. All kinds of intimacy made her, a mother, blush uncontrollably. Apart from her red face, all that was left was an indescribable sense of loss. In her entire life, it was probably true that she could not compare to her aunt in any way. Seeing this scene, the Empress Dowager and the Emperor finally felt relieved. Although Gu Shengyin would send letters regularly, they always felt uneasy if they didn't see it with their own eyes. They were afraid that she would not have a good life in Tianlong. They were afraid that she would have no one to complain to when she was wronged. Now, the Empress Dowager felt that she could finally feel at ease. Some things could be pretended, but some things could not be pretended. Her Baochan was living a happy life. Chapter 1291. In the dark alleyway, a bright light flashed like a bolt of lightning, illuminating the dark alleyway for a moment. At the moment when the light lit up, if someone was here, they would see that something ferocious flew up with the light. Gu Shengyin stood there expressionlessly as he watched the demonic creature's body turn into ashes. By tomorrow morning, there would be nothing left here. She lowered her head slightly, and the long sword in her hand disappeared in an instant and integrated into her body in a way that defied scientific common sense. However, if even monsters appeared, what else was impossible? Tonight's mission was completed. Gu Shengyin wore her inconspicuous t-shirt and jeans and walked towards her home. In this world, her identity was not simple at all. An exorcist. A profession that sounded very high and mighty from the name, and in fact what it did was also very high and mighty. The modern city was full of luxury, and behind the prosperity was the constant breeding of human desires. Those desires were invisible and traceless, but they wandered in every corner of the city. Once enough evil thoughts were absorbed, these desires would be able to take shape. These shape-shifted existences only had a preliminary appetite and did not have a complete ability to think. To put it in modern terms, they were all very strong and mentally retarded. As for the appearance of these monsters, as monsters formed by absorbing evil thoughts, their appearance could be imagined. This was Gu Shengyin's description of them. For ordinary people, these monsters that were almost unafraid of physical attacks were simply monsters that were difficult to resist. Therefore, the profession of exorcist came into being. There were many kinds of exorcist predecessors. Among the first exorcists, there were accomplished masters of Buddhism, reclusive Taoist masters, and some powerful feng shui sorcerers. Later, when the monsters were rampant, these people realized that it was difficult to resist so many monsters with their strength alone. Therefore, the powerful state machinery began to operate. The government directly established a special department for exorcism, headed by several highly respected masters, to find talented people all over the country and let them join this special profession. Of course, the existence of exorcist was still a secret of the country. Even the existence of the demons was concealed by the country. Otherwise, if they found out that there was such a terrifying monster in the world they lived in, it would easily cause panic among the people. The body that Gu Shengyin came to was Jiang Lan. She was 23 years old this year. On the surface, she was the owner of an ordinary flower shop, but in fact, she was the most talented among the young exorcists of this generation. During the day, she would lie lazily in her little flower shop and take an afternoon nap. At night, this girl with lazy eyebrows would transform into a female Azura that was even more attractive than a demon. Jiang Lan had no parents and no siblings. She was born with the fate of being a cursed star. Such a person was born with few family ties, but in terms of cultivation, she was the best seedling. The one who taught Jianglan was a Buddhist master. That master liked her very much, but he didn't dare to accept her as a disciple. She was a cursed loner. Not only did she have a weak relationship with her relatives, anyone who got close to her would not have a good ending. Even so, the master died in an accidental explosion when Jianglan was 17 years old. The master had been benevolent all his life. He should have lived a perfect life. From then on, Jianglan knew that she was an inauspicious person. Chapter 1314. A Special Commemoration. Chapter 1292. She began to consciously alienate herself from everyone around her. Not many people knew that she was a heavenly cursed lone star. Those colleagues all said that the very powerful Jianglan was an extremely arrogant person to the bone. Although she smiled faintly to everyone, no one had ever appeared beside her. When Jianglan heard this rumor, he didn't care about it and allowed it to spread. Over time, no one really paid attention to Jianglan. Only one person. Yanzi was also an exorcist who became famous at a young age, but she was always suppressed by Jianglan. Yanzi was beautiful and cheerful. She was like a goddess in the entire special department. Her only regret was that she was always inferior to Jianglan in the mission assessment. She always thought that Jianglan didn't like her and was targeting her. She didn't know that if Jianglan really wanted to target her, she only needed to deliberately get close to her. Those who were close to the heavenly calamitous lone star would be unlucky at best, and even lose their lives at worst. Yanzi didn't know, so she always provoked Jianglan. Her life goal was to defeat Jianglan and become the #1 exorcist of the younger generation. But unfortunately, until Jianglan died, she didn't succeed. How did Jianglan die? Once, she received a mission where an extremely powerful monster was about to be born. She needed to destroy the monster before it was fully awakened. But she didn't know who leaked the news, and this mission was also known by Yanzi. She went to the monster's lair in front of Jianglan. How powerful was that monster? Even Jianglan had to prepare a lot of things in advance before she was ready to set off. How could Yanzi, who rushed over excitedly when she heard the news, be its opponent? When Jianglan arrived there, what she saw was Yanzi dying under the monster's claws. Although Jianglan didn't like Yanzi very much, she couldn't watch her die in the monster's hands. She saved Yanzi, and because of that, she was hit by the monster's claws. However, he didn't expect to see Yanzi leave without even looking back when he was on the verge of death after killing the monster. Jianglan died there due to excessive blood loss. She didn't have to die. As long as Yanzi applied medicine to her wound at that time, or made an emergency call for her. Or perhaps, she would let Yanzi die in the monster's lair. If she hadn't been injured while trying to save Yanzi, she wouldn't have had such a hard time. But there were no ifs. So Jianglan died and Gu Shengyin came here. Jianglan was a genius. This was not only reflected in her talent for cultivation, but also in her wisdom. Before she went to complete this mission, she had already begun to develop a magic absorption array. It was a formation that could absorb people's evil thoughts. As long as he succeeded, it would be equivalent to breaking the foundation of those monsters. It was a pity that she was dead. Her belongings had not been carefully organized. The fruits of her painstaking efforts over the past few years had quietly turned into ashes along with her corpse in the flames. When Jianglan's body was cremated, Yanzi cried herself to the point of losing her voice. The surrounding people were surprised that Yanzi and Jianglan had such a good relationship. Seeing this, Gu Shengyin sneered. Good relationship? No matter what Yanzi was thinking when she turned her head and left, it was impossible for her not to know what Jianglan's situation was at that time. It was also impossible for her not to know that Jianglan was likely to die. She still left. In other words, at least at that moment, she wanted Jianglan to die. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.